Okay, welcome everyone. The presentation is about to begin. This session will be recorded and will last 60 minutes approximately. Please keep your mic mute during the presentation and turn off your cameras. If you have a question or comment, enter it in the chat during the presentation and your question will be addressed by the presenter at the end. All participants in today's event will have access to the recorded version, which will be available within 1 week after the live event. TESOL International Association's Higher Education Interest section is pleased to present this webinar titled Vocabulary Acquisitions Through Picture Description, a Mixed Design Study. Our speaker is Pamela Guevara. We are very pleased to welcome all of you to this webinar. My name is Roxana Ramirez and I will be your moderator for today's event. And now it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Pamela. Welcome to the program and let's get started.
Thank you, Rosana. Hello, everyone. I am Pamela. This is my topic, vocabulary acquisition through picture description. I hope everyone enjoyed this information, and at the end, there will be questions. The study included this information: principles, participants, problems, and finally, the proposal. We're going to start with the principles. As English teachers, it is important that we consider guidelines in our English teaching experience. First, let's talk about learning. Students use prior knowledge of meaning, form, and function to determine vocabulary acquisition. What is vocabulary? It is one unit of lexis, or one word that is used in a specific moment. And let's talk about acquisition. The information nowadays needs to be learned naturally. It is beneficial because you don't notice that you're learning, but you do it in a real life environment. CLT is an approach. It means communicative language teaching. The use of this approach involves using meaningful activities so students can learn the language. Examples: role plays, discussions, and picture description. Backward design is a framework of English language teaching. During my master's degree at Casa Grande University, we were able to determine that if you focus on your learning goal, you will be able to determine the tasks that students will have to do in each lesson. So for this reason, I considered in my study the standards, the national curriculum standards. The first one that I considered was using familiar everyday expressions and basic phrases. Another one that is included in this document from local authorities is producing simple sentences with detail. The vocabulary range of my students and the context. The range of the vocabulary should be able to be communicated in context of family and friends. So let's continue with the participants. These are some of my students. They were young students. The ages ranged from 10 to 17 years old. The place where I worked, it was my own private English institute. So that's why the ages were so different. One of the limitations that as English teachers or educators every day we're facing is that, first of all, acquiring a language, it doesn't matter which, it's complex. We have to add time limitations, resource limitations to this formula, and also what kind of motivation our students have for learning English. The problem with time limitations is that students only use the language during the lesson or inside the classroom. For this reason, it is understandable that learners will have fewer opportunities of interaction. The first information that I got from EF webpage, it was that Ecuador was in position 65. However, I updated this information, and in 2020, Ecuador is placed in 93. So we know and we have read the news that there are some problems or some setbacks in English language learning, acquisition, and teaching. For this reason, we have to consider the English teacher standards, the Common European Framework of References for Languages, and English language learning standards, and the English language curriculum. Vocabulary acquisition. This is one of my variables, and I will tell you why. I was interested in teaching vocabulary to my students because it is considered as one of the first steps in English language learning. Let's think for a moment when we start speaking in Spanish. We start by saying word by word, and then with the help of our parents or teachers or grandparents, we start developing the language. Vocabulary is also a curiosity trigger in students. It is known that people are always facing challenges and that we are always looking for new activities to do and more knowledge to acquire. And it's a tangible goal in language acquisition. In the case of this present study, I focused on adjectives. Why? Because it's a feasible start for language learners, the second easiest word class to learn, and it helps igniting students' imagination. The strategy was picture description. So I wanted my students to learn vocabulary using the strategy of picture description. Throughout some research, I understood that picture description motivates learners to learn, increases participation. I found this from previous research. It also engages students to perform, and it gives a greater experiencing of the language. Some of the findings were positive. Some studies found that they would improve throughout. Using the picture description, students would be able to improve their vocabulary, to engage with, they were more engaged using these visual images. They were able to prepare, they had more time to prepare for written tasks, and they were able to negotiate meaning, among other benefits. I am focused here in written activities because my last learning goal was for them to write sentences using the vocabulary. And I will tell you later why. That's why I found that some studies um, reported some positive results in written activities. There was an increase in class participation. They were more willing to write sentences. Let's start with the study. Considering picture description and vocabulary acquisition, I wanted to know first, to what extent does picture description improve students' acquisition of new vocabulary? Number two, what are students' perspective towards the innovation? In the first question, let's bear in mind that we needed grades. And for the second question, we needed a survey for to gather their perspectives. This is some of the activities that we used. As you can see, they were in these pictures, they were describing their favorite toy. I asked them to bring their favorite toy, and one of the recommendations that I give you is that picture description it shouldn't be only one picture, but it could be objects or selfies that it's our students' reality nowadays. This is the one that I'm telling you. If you can see the one to the left, I asked the students to take a selfie of themselves, and then I would show them to all of the students, and they had to describe themselves. So they were describing a picture, but it was a selfie. And one of my students wanted to take the picture with me, so she described both of us. In the other activity, as you can see, it's Thanos. And I told them, how would you feel if Thanos snapped his fingers? So it's a picture, but I wanted to also trigger their feelings. Let's remember that adjectives, you can say, I am afraid, I feel embarrassed, or I feel frightened, etc. This was the final product that I wanted my students to achieve, to create a glossary for them. The glossary included the word, and at the back of this word, they had to write one sentence that would give you the context of the meaning of that word. In other words, in the front, it would say afraid. And in the back, they would say, I am afraid of spiders because they are ugly. That was one example. For this reason, I encouraged the use of so and because. These are my participants, most of them teens. Before starting the study, I implemented this placement test. Just first of all, remember that I explained about the use of backward design. So by understanding or by identifying the level of my students, in this case, it was A1, I know what the standards are for A1 level. So based on that, I could prepare the activities for them. As you can see, they are A1, A2. These are the results. One of the instruments that helped me gathering the information from my students was the VKS. This is a vocabulary knowledge scale. I found it during my research, but it was very useful because it gave you 4 degrees of knowledge. The first one is, I don't remember having seen this word before. I have seen this word. The second level is, I have seen this word, but I don't remember the meaning. 3, I have seen this word, but I cannot use it. And the last one is, I have seen this word and I can use it in a sentence, or I know the meaning. The survey was first taken to a group of students just to see if this survey worked or not. It is called the reliability. These are the 7 Likert type questions where you have to place if you totally agree or totally disagree with a statement. In this case, the survey was to gather perspectives from students. It was important for me to include questions using the strategy, describing pictures, and the piece of information that I wanted them to learn, that is vocabulary. So as you can see, one of the statements, the first statement is, describing pictures is very interesting for me. So they had to decide if they agreed, they disagreed, or totally disagreed. This is the result. The reliability was low, but thanks to the advice of my coordinator, I was able to take it again. I had to take it again. And then I found that the reliability was good because I took the test to a bigger group. So once the students took the test of each word, I had to score. So when students did not know the word at all, the score was 0, and then according to each level, the grades or scores increased. The positive result in vocabulary acquisition was that they increased vocabulary knowledge. There was a growth in 40.88%. Vocabulary in context. As I was telling you before, the goal was for them to write a sentence. That's why I also measured vocabulary in context. I measured how they used the word in a complete sentence, and they did have an increase of 22.22%. This means that at the beginning of the study, they were not able to use the word in a sentence, but after the study, after implementing several techniques of picture description, they were able to use this word, recognize it, and use them correct in an appropriate context. The results start like this. The study is considered educationally meaningful. This means that the effect size, you can do it on your own, you can do it in your school, and there's a good chance that you can replicate this result, that it is very likely that your students will also have an increase in vocabulary knowledge. As you can see, there's a picture where I graded, and the first grade was 77 in vocabulary knowledge, and the grade after the study was 99. one of a few of the most important answers from students in the aspect of perspectives is that they felt that they liked picture description. They felt more motivated. They thought it was very helpful for them. And they felt motivated to write. They didn't know that they were going to learn how to write. I didn't tell them at the beginning of the study, and it was a great benefit and a surprise for both parties, for students and for me as a teacher. The survey results. As you can see, I had to code the information from my students. So the survey results, what they helped me was to gather more information. It was because they were young. They were teens, so sometimes they answered, yes, I like that, but they didn't give me more information. So I asked them, okay, tell me more. Why did you like them? And they said, oh, because it is different than what I do in school, or I use the same in another subject. And that kind of information gave me more insight from my students' perspective. This is the discussion. It is possible that this strategy will increase the odds of achieving a bigger amount of vocabulary knowledge. You may increase scores in vocabulary knowledge and in vocabulary in context. Students also develop a better understanding of how sentences work and how to connect the ideas by using context. In the second aspect, in terms of their attitudes towards the innovation, they thought that they had more opportunities to use the language. I have to be very honest with you. During the activities, I noticed that I could not only focus on writing. They have to write. They have to listen to information so they can write. They have to read information so they can write. So I had to integrate all skills. My main goal was for them to create sentences, but in the meantime, during all these activities, they were able to experience all the skills in one. They had the opportunity to increase participation. One of them told me, I feel better now at school. I don't feel so nervous when the teacher asked me to do something. And this was also because when I asked them to do picture description, they had to do a presentation. They had to write their sentences, but they had to stand up in front of everyone to share the information. So they started to feel better about oral presentations too. It is another side effect of the study. And they had the opportunity to write in English and have a greater experience of the language. The perspectives, picture description, it was a great chance for them to produce the language. They thought that it was very helpful and interesting. And it had a great acceptance too. So in summary, they felt motivated. Sometimes that is what we look for in our students. English language is sometimes difficult for people that do not use them in their households, or they just don't have the tools or internet or any resource where they can find English language. Students showed positive outcomes for the two research questions. I consider, according to the findings, that the attempt to narrow down the gap of the differences in English levels and limitations to produce, to communicate, was successful. It was better than I expected, actually. They improved in learning vocabulary. They were motivated. They were more curious. They asked more questions. Doubts decreased. They were more efficient because at the beginning of the study, they took 10 minutes to create one sentence, but then they were able to do more sentences in less time. The grade for the score for the BKS, I did it in a general way. I didn't focus on each one of the levels. So for example, it was after the study that I could notice which words specifically they learned. Some of them remained the same. So for example, brave, they thought the meaning was bravo, like angry. And some of them, after the study, they knew, okay, brave is, someone that has courage. So also the word strange is a particular example of what, if they had problems with these words. Limitations. The study included 10 participants. They were my own students. I didn't work at any institute at the time. It was my own private office. So the sample was not big. Perhaps if you have the chance to do it and replicate this study in your classrooms, the sample will be bigger. The recommendations, real life pictures. I used books, don't get me wrong. I used books. I used magazines, everything that I could use. Magazines, books, but I told them, okay, from all these books, choose the picture that you like the most. So at least I made them open a book, teens do not usually like reading. So they took selfies. It has to be very meaningful, and the activities need to be related to their own reality, to their own context. So I made them use the dictionary. They didn't know how to use a dictionary. I told them, okay, no phones. So you can pick up certain skills that will go together with these kinds of activities. And I highly recommend to do it in a longer period of time because I did have time constraints. So it was only for 2 months that I followed up this research. Okay, so that's it. Some questions?
Thank you, Pamela. Do you have questions? I don't see any questions in the chat, but if you have questions, you can add your questions in the chat. I think it was a great experience starting with vocabulary, but not focusing on vocabulary, but in the different skills that students have to develop. And I think it was a very fluid. Yes, you can ask a question. Okay, yeah, you can use, you can activate your mic and ask your question.
Hello, Pamela. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Thank you very much for this nice presentation and this study. I'm from Turkey and very much similar to the context that you have in Ecuador, in the sense that usually teaching language, I mean, foreign language, English, is pretty problematic in the country as well. But isn't it normal that usually at earlier ages, it's just, through vocabulary that we keep our students, gripping what we mean, or, enhancing their motivation or whatever. That, in that sense, this study is very meaningful. I have a few questions about the research study and the methodology. The 10 students that you picked up, were they at similar proficiency levels?
Their proficiency levels were A1, A2.
Okay, so you said 10 students and then you mixed them?
Yes.
But then while you were testing their vocabulary knowledge, did you give the same test?
Yes.
But how did it work for them? I mean, their levels are not the same, but still the same test. So isn't it kind of like unfair for A1 levels where A2 levels are, a bit, maybe I don't know, maybe I missed that part. Do you explain it
No, no,
maybe?
it's okay. It's okay. Let me show you. So the BKS was the test that I took to my students, that my students took. It was only a list of words. There it is. It was a list of words
And then,
from A to Cambridge, the vocabulary that they knew. So from A to Z, which one do you know, and tell me in what level do you know it?
how about the sentences? I mean, we usually require our students not just remember the vocabulary, the meaning, but them, as you said also in communicative language teaching, for them to use it in context, in sentences, not just,
Mm-hmm.
know them the meaning, just like a dictionary,
Sure.
dictionary. So were there sentences in your test that they could actually see the sentences and the vocab underlined or something, so that they could decide whether they could guess the meaning or deduce the meaning out of the context, or they do remember the sentences? Because I
Mm-hmm.
see separate vocab lists here, which I find myself very not very close to using them. Rather, in communicative language teaching, in line with the theory over there and the practice in
Mm-hmm.
context, I let them to use in context and
Yeah,
recognize them in context. So can can you give me an example where the test, like, uh,
sure.
did they see the sentences or?
Yeah. Okay, so this was the test only for vocabulary knowledge.
Uh-huh.
The first three levels was to know if they recognized or not the word. But the
Okay.
last one, I don't know if I have, no, I don't have to write. Okay, so number 4, it says, I can use the word in a sentence. I would grade this sentence. If they cannot use it, well, they didn't have vocabulary in context.
Uh-huh.
After that, I measured 2 things, vocabulary knowledge and vocabulary in context. That's why after the study, I know that they increased only the amounts of words that they learn, but also they increased the use of these words in context. How did I measure this? This is the vocabulary into context. I know the meaning of the word and I know how to use it in a sentence with context. And they would write their the sentence that they thought was correct. This was prior to the study,
Uh-huh.
before study. But then and it was a great question because I think it was not very clear. During the activities, I showed them how to create sentences using so and because. So they had only to create, they only had to write, I am scared, only I am scared, the adjective, I am scared, and then so because.
All
I'm
right.
scared because I saw a ghost. In that part, they would have my help. Or they would use the dictionary. But for the first part, I am scared because, and then we would have to continue. It was 2 months of teaching them how to create sentences using so and because.
Great. Now I understand. That was a very good explanation.
So that's why it is acquisition, because I was showing them how to write a sentence using so and because. But in the meantime, I told them, okay, tell me how you feel. So they had to use scared, happy, all of these words without telling them, okay, what's the meaning of happy? What's the meaning of scared?
Yeah.
They would come themselves.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, there is another question. What are the implications of your study in your area?
In my area, as an English teacher, I had to learn first how to plan using backward design. It was a great piece of advice to focus on your ultimate goal, to use the standards. It doesn't matter the country you are, but if you know the level of your students, if they are A1, you go to the standards. Okay, what should they be doing at this level, and how can I help them achieve that goal? So in my case, the implication was to just focus on where they start and help them perhaps achieve a little or go a little further than that. It was maybe about respecting their learning process, respecting where they come from, what's their English language background, and how to help them going anywhere else from there.
Okay, another question is, did the activities allow you to, allow you and the students to provide feedback?
Yes, during all the, it was a great question. Yes, I didn't include that in my presentation. During all the classes, I told them that they would have to check each other's sentences. So I used a game. Perhaps it is useful for you. They would have to create their sentences, and it was like chanton. You have to stop writing and then go to it, stand up and go to another table and check the other person's sentence. If they had, sometimes they had to show me because I was in front of them, and I told them, okay, if it's good, tell them it's good. And if it needs improvement, based on anything that I would tell them, perhaps if you didn't understand it, tell them, keep working. Not, I told them, do not say it's bad, just tell them keep working. So they would go around each other's notebooks and they told me, It's good. Okay. So if it's good, they had to create using another word or another context.
Thank you, Pamela. No more questions. Congratulations on your presentation. I think it was very interesting for all